Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And if you are on this Sunday celebrating a holiday, I hope that you're having a blessed holiday, however you worship. My name is Shafiq Abdussabur, and I'm running for mayor for the city of New Haven. I am a Democratic candidate. I've been a Democrat my whole life and formerly in Alder, and now I'm running for mayor of New Haven. And so the question today, I just want to take some time out and talk with you all and answer a burning question that many folks have had as to why are you running for Mayor Shafiq? And what's been really interesting over this last almost 4.5 months of this campaign, so what's really been interesting is people have approached me asking me in a way of, why are you running for mayor of New Haven? I mean, you were a retired police sergeant. You should be going to be a police chief. Are you running for mayor to be the police chief? You're a successful businessman. You ran a multi-million dollar business. You obviously know how to do business, create jobs, and create wealth for the community and yourself and your family. Why would you run for mayor? Is there an angle? Is there something behind this? What's motivating you? And I think those are all valid questions, right? And so today I wanted to take time out and just really talk about, why am I running for mayor? I mean, think about it. I'm 56 years old, was a police officer for 21 and a half years. I retired as a decorated sergeant. I have led the nation on police reform policies. And even in Connecticut, I sit on the Connecticut State Task Force for Police Reform. I've contributed to police reform bills since Alvin Penn wrote The Black Man's Guide to Law Enforcement in America, one of the only police officers in America that actually wrote a book to tell you how not to go to jail. Why in the world would this guy, me, want to run for mayor for the city of New Haven? Am I bored? Do I have a gripe? Is there an angle? Well, here's why. Because I am 56 years old and I did grow up in New Haven, and I actually still live in the house that I bought almost 24 years ago and raised three of my four children in this house and in this backyard. My mother lives here. My mother lives in Westville. She's lived in her house for now probably 40 years. My father is deceased. He was a mailman. My mother was a daycare owner. She owned a daycare, and she worked as a person inside of the school. She actually was a school parent-teacher liaison back during the early times of Dr. Mayo. My children live here. Two of my children actually live in the city. My daughter, she doesn't live too far away, struggling to keep her apartment because the affordability for young people in this city, her being under 24 years old, is really difficult. My other son is a police officer. He's a homeowner and a police officer. I call him my resident police officer because he actually managed to purchase the home next door. And so he's actually my neighbor and he's a police officer. But even he has concerns and has had concerns about his ability to live in the city. Being a police officer, that gives him a good paying job and that allows him to be able to currently live in the city. My sister lives a couple of blocks behind her, and my brother-in-law, they own their home. They've been living in the neighborhood for about 20, 24 years or so. And I have several relatives and nieces and nephews and family members and friends that I grew up in this city with my entire life that I see almost on a day-to-day or every other day basis. And so why would I want to run for mayor of New Haven? Why New Haven? Well, I live in New Haven and I care about New Haven. And I care about my neighborhood and all the neighborhoods throughout the city. Some I grew up in, Fairhaven, 222 Ferry Street, grew up on Edgar Street, 139 Golf Street, Foot Street, where my grandmother lived, Golf near Bethel. Grew up all over the city. I've watched this city, as we hear and I've heard, like, oh, the city goes through ups and downs and eaves and flows. Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story that when I was 7 years old and my grandmother, the late Mary Johnson, lived over on Foot Street. Back then in the 70s, those were the projects. People had jobs, people worked in their backyards. They had tomato plants and chickens and all kinds of things. It was a really nice neighborhood growing up. Folks was broke, but they didn't know that they were poor. We all worked together. People went to church on Sundays. Everybody went to school. There was options for school. There were neighborhood schools. You could go to the school in your neighborhood and get a fairly decent education to move on in life. And for those who could pay to go to private school, you could go to then St. Martin's, which was also technically in the projects. It's now where the park is there on Ashman Street. I went to St. Aidan's up until the fourth grade. And after the fourth grade, my parents, my father, who was a mailman, had enough money and they struggled and put their pennies together and sent me to St. Aidan's. So I actually went to St. Aidan's from the fifth grade on to high school. When I got in eighth grade, what was really interesting about St. Aidan's, they said, raise your hand if you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, a teacher, raise your hand. If you want to be these things, we would raise our hand. If you want to be those things, those careers, you're going to go to college. So you should go to St. Mary's, Notre Dame, Fairfield Prep, or some school like that. They said, if you want to be a plumber or an electrician, raise your hand over here. So some students raised their hand, just a few. I can tell you it was just a few. They said, you're going to go to Eli Whitney, and that would be the school you'll go to. Nevertheless, back then we had options. I went on to college. I wound up coming back home. I didn't finish college in Georgia. I did 3 years. And then I came back home. My mother got sick, and I came back home in 1989, 90. City of New Haven, out of control. War on drugs, police chasing people, the beat down posse, dilapidated housing. Every other house in New Orleans was abandoned. Every other house in the hills seemed to be abandoned, a disaster. And so I got involved in activism around housing and housing reform. Back then, Gary Hogan was working for the city, and I was actually there when Gary, under DeStefano, started putting together what we now know as LCI. I actually was an advocate for reforming that building department at that time because there was a whole lot of other issues, and we'll talk about those in videos to come. But nevertheless, I watched the city evolve. I watched the Dollar House program. I watched when many of the churches had abandoned properties next to the churches, and under the LCI program, the Dollar Property program, many of the churches were able to get some of those properties and make what you now see the large parking lots, right, that they have, and they extended the parking lots. Some residents were able to buy some of those lots, and those lots were able to make their yards bigger. At that time, the mayor said we wanted to reduce the density in New Haven, and we'll knock down houses and go for and so forth to do that. So I watched New Haven change. And as a police officer, I've worked in some of the worst neighborhoods of the city, unfortunately, at the time. Areas where you walk the beat every day, there were gunshots, where there was poverty, where the same people often get shot. One family in the Hill, mother lost 4 of her children to gun violence before they all turned the age of 26. Imagine that. Imagine that. All in the same neighborhood. So what I've learned over the years is that the issues that happen in New Haven in our communities, when we hear about things about, oh, no harm to the rest of the public because somebody got shot. It is harming to the public. It harms the entire city. And so as I've had a chance to reflect and be more and more involved and engaged and passionate about the rights of people in this city, people who are homeless, people who have housing security, people who we refer to as second chance, who come home from prison and struggle to get a job and struggle to get housing. Despite all of the housing and job programs and training, they struggle to get connected to these resources because often there's a breakdown in communication. The parents who lose their children to gun violence, who struggle to get follow-ups on the investigation, who struggle to get the secondary services for their children and for themselves as they have to live through this tragedy. The grandmas, like my mother, who's a grandma, who's struggling to live on a small Social Security budget. that barely allows her to put her bills together had it not been for all of these supplemental programs that's out there that she has to take advantage of in order to have her lifestyle. And so I looked at all of these things and I decided, let's do something. And so I got involved as an alder, right? I ran for alder. I got involved, got more involved in my community, moving beyond volunteership, getting involved into the electoralship of governing the city and governing people. And that was an eye opener. That was a big eye opener. Getting in there, there's a lot of different opinions that people have about the Board of Alders and different alders that are there. But the bottom line is, this is what I believe. Stand up for what you believe in and fight for the people. Stand up for what you believe in and fight for the people. And that's what I did. I did that. I did that for 6 months until I ran into an issue that I perceived myself to be a conflict of interest around my company and being an alder. And therefore, I decided to do what I believe that people would want to see me do, what my mother raised me to do, what my father raised me to do, my grandparents raised me to do, my aunties that watch me, listening to me, some of us out here listening to me now, was I decided to remove myself from that position so that I would not have a conflict with the public. And given the timeline that I had to do it, we already know the rest of that story of kind of like how it unfolded. But believe me, it was not something that I wanted to do. It was something where my hand was forced to do. And so, therefore, I relinquished my position as alder after 6 months. I did get a lot done, though. And what I loved about my community, which was very outraged about this, they said, look, you got a lot done in 6 months. You got the sidewalks paved, all the things that you said you were going to do miraculously. You were able to get those things done in 6 months. Part of the reason was that I started doing them 6 months before I even got the position. But what I realized, I had two choices. Do I kind of walk away, fade into the sunset, go restart my business, make a bunch of money, life is good? The Abdussaburs are doing great. Shafiq, that's my man. I remember him from back in the day. Do I do that? How do I do that? How do I do that when almost every other day in this city somebody is getting shot? How do I do that when almost every other day in between somebody getting shot, somebody get hit with a car? Somebody's getting hit and killed with a car. Cars are crashing into bus stops. How do I do that when almost once a week I open up the newspaper and you look and see that our reading scores are down and kids can't read and parents can't get their kids in the right schools and kids are not going to school? And how do I sit home? I can't sit home. One, because I know that I have the skill set, I know I have the talent, and I know I have the resources to move this city into a forward direction, So why am I running for mayor? To move this city forward. The goal for me as a mayor, I want to be a mayor that just not keep our city in a status quo. Things are good right now. Things are not good right now. Things are not good for everybody all over the city. I spent the other Saturday, I spent half the day in East Shore. And I can assure you that things are not okay in East Shore. I can assure you that people are absolutely livid about that airport expansion. I spent the day with residents who bear witness that the planes taking off at that airport create such a vibration through their homes that the nails are coming out of the walls of their homes. This is what the residents say. They said they're not happy. And they told me, they said, Shafiq, when you go into the other neighborhoods of New Haven, when you go into New Hallville and Dixwell, please let them know we're not happy in our neighborhood either. We have issues. But then I spent another part of the day in Kensington Square, at the Kensington Square Park, where a bunch of wonderful residents have been fighting just to keep a park space about the size of a double house lot, a small park space that the city sold from up under the residents. And these residents told me, look at all the children playing. They had a spring festival and an Easter egg hunt. They said, you see how important this park is to the young people? Look at all of them playing together. And it was just such a beautiful sight to see, 5-year-olds and 3-year-olds and 8-year-old kids, a bunch of them. There was like 70 kids all out there playing. And all I could think about when I grew up, playing in the park and how wonderful that was, and the relationships that I made, and the people to this day that I have relationships with from playing in the park. Why am I running for mayor? To save that park and other parks around the city. Other parks around the city that have fall into massive disrepair. The grass is not cut. The trees is not cut. I want to be the mayor to clean your parks. I want to make sure that your parks are clean. I want to make sure that your parks are prioritized, because these are places that we know from COVID. These are spaces that are desperately needed in the city where you can go and keep your peace of mind, where you can go and be able to get fresh air, where you can go and just be able to relax after a long day. Parks are important. Why am I running for mayor? Let's talk about our schools. Let's talk about the schools, because the schools have been a flashpoint and they will continue to be a flashpoint. Just the other day, the White House released a report to the Treasury Secretary. And part of that report talks about reforming the welfare system for people who get welfare, and they want to put them back to work. So they're proposing that if you get state assistance or federal assistance, they want you to either work for 20 hours, volunteer for 20 hours, or be in school for 20 hours. This is the new proposal. And what was really interesting that came out of that is the national study says this: there's only two defined ways really that you get yourself out of poverty or out of economic disadvantage wealth: training and education. Why is it that in New Haven, the training always comes after you go to jail? The training always comes after you fail out of school. The training opportunities always come after the fact. And then education is supplemented with that. I want to be a mayor where we put training programs inside of the public schools, inside the schools, so that when young people go to school, you'll get the training that you need along with your education, so that when you graduate, you can go right into the job market. You know, I said this as an Alder. It's become a really popular term now, and I love it. So, hey, I'll go with it. All people are not going to college. I said this back when I was running for Alder. I'll say it again. And why are they not going to go to college? Now I'm going to qualify why they're not going to go to college. You know why? Because some people, after they finish high school, just don't want to go to school anymore and have to do work. That's a lot of work. Every day you got to get up, you got to take classes, that's stressful. Some people will go to college their first year, like many of our students from New Haven, but won't be able to afford the second year. They wanted to be in school for a second year, but they can't afford it. So they're back home. Some students, college is not your pathway. They like to cook. They like to do landscaping. They like to work outside. High school is where we use that time to flush all of that out, to give them all of the option, to give them the various pathways of success. No, it's just not a trade school program. But a trade school program, as I've been advocating and as the mayor, I can tell you, we're going to get a trade school program. I don't want to hear about, Eli Whitney has a program. That's a state program. I want a trade school for New Haven students in New Haven. And you know what perfect place for that would be? Taking what we call alternative schools, and we often characterize it as these alternative schools have children that are less than, or sometimes less prioritized than in terms of learning. We take these alternative schools and we create alternative pathways of success for our young people. Alternative schools where you can go and you can learn carpentry, you can learn how to do electricity, you can learn how to do auto mechanics, you can learn how to do cosmetology, all the things that's around us in this city. We should be educating our young people to be ready to do these jobs. These are the jobs. These are the jobs. Go outside on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Go outside any day of the week and look up and look at the wires, and you'll see somebody working on the wires. When you finish looking at the wires, look down. You'll see somebody working in what we call a manhole, whether it's the gas company, the water company, electric company. Somebody's working on the street almost every single day of this week. So These are the type of jobs we should be directing our children to. Why am I running for mayor? Why am I running for mayor? Because I want to restaff our city so that our city can actually run the way it was intended to run. Right now, we have roughly 380 openings in our city for jobs. Roughly 130 teachers are open. These are unfilled positions. We have roughly 60 unfilled teacher paraprofessional positions. These are the teacher's aide, unfilled. We are down 100 police officers, unfilled. We are down 112 positions at the city of New Haven, unfilled. You know what's really interesting about those positions is because when I went to the budget meeting about 2 months ago, one of the staffers from City Hall, the interim budget director, said that the city's losing revenue because of a lack of filled positions. It's actually losing revenue. So we're actually losing money because we're failing to hire people. I want to be the mayor to hire people and fill those positions so that we can recoup that revenue that we get in parking tickets. So we're down parking ticket, the people that work in traffic and parking that write the tickets and monitor the tickets, that's understaffed. And so because it's understaffed, less tickets are being written, and that's less money coming into the city. This is what the City Hall staffer said. And one of the alders said to them in the budget hearing, well, I'm on the website now and I'm looking and I don't see anything up here where I could apply if I wanted to apply for the job or somebody wanted to apply for this job in traffic and parking. It's not listed. And they said, well, we don't list all the jobs that are available because we don't have the staff to hire those jobs. I'm running for mayor because it's about leadership. And I understand leadership. And I understand making tough decisions. And I understand hiring. Because my company, I manage 250 people. 250 people we have to manage on a day-to-day basis. Folks who had personal struggles and financial struggles, we hired them during COVID. I understand people. I understand the needs of people. I understand the needs of families in the city. And 387 unfilled positions in the city of New Haven, that's revenue. Imagine if all those positions could be filled by either New Haven residents or people who would take on that job and move to New Haven and become New Haven residents. That's 387 job growth. So why am I running for mayor? Because I'm going to create jobs. I'm going to create jobs. You know why? Because I'm going to hire the people to fill these positions that are open, that are critical. 130 teachers with reduced class sizes. 100 police officers. No, I don't need police officers to chase people down the street and run and gun and chase cars. That's not what I'm talking about, people. I'm talking about a police car that would be on the street that would deter people from speeding 60 and 70 miles an hour down Whaley Avenue, that winds up hitting people in the same intersection 2 nights in a row. Second night, somebody got killed. I'm talking about a police officer that could be parked near a school during the day when your kid is going to school, when your child is in school, where they could feel safe and it could be a deterrent for a potential mass shooter or somebody who had bad intentions for doing something in or around our schools. We pay for this security. We pay for these positions. And you paid for these positions, by the way. These 387 unfilled positions, you paid for them with your tax dollar. They're just not filled. I want to be a leader that fills this city's positions and gets this city back on track. I'm going to listen to communities. I'm going to listen to the leaders. I'm going to listen to the other elected officials out there. Many of you, I know, we don't always agree, but we never have conflict. We can agree on that. I may not always agree with all the elected officials in the city, the Board of Alders, the New Haven delegation, some of the co-chairs. But one thing that I think we can all agree on is we never have conflict, because I do listen. I do listen, and I don't need to win the discussion or the debate all the time. I have the ability to hear you and see you. Many of you I've been talking to, many of the co-chairs I have come and approach and talk to. I want co-chairs, the co-chairs out there that run the wards. I'm hearing you and I'm listening to you and I'm meeting with you all. Some of you I haven't met with yet, and I'm still working on that, but I'm excited to sit down with you and talk to you and treat you like an equal partner in government, an equal partner in government. I pledge to you, as the mayor, I won't just come see you on election day or when it's time for the new round of votes or, when I need an endorsement. You'll be able to talk to me anytime. And we'll talk on a regular basis and we'll build that bond and that relationship. And I will let you know and show you that I care by giving you the resources in your community where it helps you be a better elected official. Right now, many of you are struggling. Many of you as co-chairs are sitting in your communities and you are struggling. You're struggling to get your sidewalk fixed. You're struggling to get your potholes done. You're struggling to get your trees trimmed. You're struggling to get your tree replaced. That tree that's sitting on the side of the sidewalk that your insurance company already told you that if that tree falls on your house, they're not going to cover it with your insurance because that tree was neglected by the city. Many of you, co-chairs, dealing with communities that are saturated by gun violence, saturated by gunfire, saturated by trauma and poverty and the lack of jobs. Yes, I'm talking to those co-chairs. I pledge and promise that I will work with you to help you rebuild your neighborhood, not from my perspective, but from your perspective, from your community perspective, from your constituent perspective. So all I'm asking you to do between now and September 12th, keep watching, keep listening, let's keep talking, and let's keep sharing ideas. Let's keep sharing this vision. Keyword. If I leave you tonight with one word that I want you to hold on to about why I'm running for mayor of New Haven, because I have a vision for this city, a vision that extends not just to your child, not just to your grandchild, but a vision that even your grandchild's grandchild will be able to live in this city, thrive in this city, own property in this city, and be able to educate their children in this city for the future forward. That's why I'm running for mayor. My name is Shafiq Abdussabur. I hope that this has helped you. There'll be more. You know me, I love series, so there'll be more to this. But I appreciate you and I welcome your support. You can reach me at voteshafiq.com. Our email is voteshafiq@gmail.com. I encourage you to go to our website and sign up as a volunteer. Go to our website and please make a donation to support this campaign. Our campaign is doing really well, and we want to continue to run a very strong and open and supportive campaign. I'm excited. I hope that you're excited. I'm here fighting for you, your children, your grandchildren, and your grandchildren's grandchildren. Thank you.